We're good to go.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. This is the
It
April
looks. Is it not working? Try that one.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. This is the April 18th, 2019 Board of Health meeting. Just like to remind everybody that this meeting is being recorded by audio and visual. Is there anything that the public would like to comment on that's not on this agenda? Okay, seeing nobody answering, we'll go right to the director's report.
Yes, so we are in full swing for permitting April. We're going to be set for almost all the restaurants open for coming Daffodil Weekend next week. There was a big push for this week because of Easter. So we have Hank, he started on Monday, and people will be seeing him dropping in on restaurants unannounced. We will be having two interns this summer. We're getting Grace McNeil again from Syracuse, a public health student from Syracuse University, and we will have Sky Flegg, who is one of the Nantucket High School students. So we're looking forward to having that information done again. And then permitting, the building boom continues. We're still really high on our building permit numbers. As far as, I forgot the tick-borne disease information this time, but it looks like it's stabilizing out again. We're looking to have a similar, so far it looks like it's similar to this time last year, but with the rain and the rainy winter and it being mild, there wasn't a lot of winter kills. So more information needs to come out soon. We are in preparation in case of any sort of measles situation here on the island. I've spoken to a couple members at the hospital, the infectious disease officer at the hospital. They're prepared for this sort of an eventuality with some of our summer folks coming from the affected areas of New York and Brooklyn. We may see at least one case here on the island, so we're trying to get information out as much as possible.
If you do remember, about 3 years ago, we did a survey, and our vaccination rate is a little above the state
Yes,
for the island.
which is really good overall in comparison to the rest of the United
It's
States.
pretty good.
The state is one of the highest. So, and I think that would be it for now.
Review of the minutes. Any additions or corrections? You get a motion to?
I approve for approval. I make a motion to approve.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Loan request, 76 Arkansas.
This is a system that failed just a few months ago hydraulically, so they're repairing it with an IA system. So there's actually no funds being used for landscaping on this one. It's very straightforward. All the money's going straight to the work.
It's IA too?
IA.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions?
I move to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Cliffside water testing.
Do you want to speak to that? Okay, thanks. Sorry.
So 4 years ago, the board voted for a monthly variance for beach sampling.
Can you point the microphone towards you? For some reason, it's
Okay.
there. We go.
Sorry, picking up on the other one. So that variance that the board grants for monthly testing of, that was Cliffside Beach, correct? Is up. And the board has to grant another variance for monthly testing so we can send that back to Barnstable. We've had no bad samples there, no exceedances. So we're looking for a positive approval for the variance request for monthly testing at Cliffside Beach so that we can continue our beach testing.
I move for approval.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 123.
So we're looking to table this because one of the members has to recuse and we won't have a quorum to vote on it. So we can table this to next month's
Next
meeting.
month. Okay. Yeah. request 55 Tennessee Ave.
With 55 Tennessee Avenue, it's a repair of a system that's in failure right now. It's a relatively hard setbacks to get there, so we're looking for maximum feasible compliance here. We have no objection.
Can I get a motion to approve that variance?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And Steve, it looks like you might have skipped 155.
Oh, I did. Okay. We'll go back to that now. 155 Walnut.
So 155 Walnut Road is looking to put in an IA voluntarily. That's always what we're looking for, so we have no objection on that one. It's a setback variance. We have no objection here.
Getting off the conventional.
Getting off the
that's
conventional,
good.
putting in an IA.
Good. I move for approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
21 Bank Street.
Yes. So I think actually, Paul Santos will introduce him.
Thank you. Is that on?
Yep.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm speaking very close. I don't think it's on.
No, I think it's on.
Okay. Hello? You hear that? Well, thank you. For the record, Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors, representing the contract purchaser of 21 Bank Street, Melissa Sparrow. With me today, too, is Melissa's attorney, Kevin Dale. This is a variance request for replacement of an existing septic system on this particular property. This is a small lot in Codfish Park. Lot area is approximately 2,400 square feet. The property is located at the intersection of Bank Street and Jefferson Street. I have submitted a exhibit plan with the application. I'm not sure if you have hard copies of those, so I'm going to give you a copy of that, along with some photos of the site, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So this application is strictly a setback variance from the state health code, Title V, and it is a setback for the reduction of the 10-foot requirement for the system to be from a property line on the lot. The setback is not from a property line to any abutting parcels. It's a setback from the 10-foot reduction to 5 feet on Jefferson Street. So the requested relief does not have a direct impact on any adjoining neighbor. It's a restriction or a setback request from Jefferson Street. So the site itself is in the process of being sold. There's an existing cesspool on the property, actually, the original system that is on this existing lot. The lot is outside of any resource area that is controlled by the Conservation Commission. It's not within any resource area, not within the setback of any resource area. It is not in any of your harbor watershed or watershed protection districts. The system that we have designed to replace this is we're adding an IA component, and we're adding an IA component with a pressure dosing system on this particular lot. And the reason we're doing that is with the IA and the pressure dosing, we're able to reduce the field size legally by code in order to gain advantage on the lot of putting this system on this small lot. The tank itself will be a polyethylene tank. The pump pit itself would be a concrete tank. And what we're trying to do is limit the amount of disturbance. Again, the construction component of this is somewhat challenging. So we're going with a lighter weight tank, going with a small pump chamber, and then we're going to go with infiltrator systems for the leach field itself. Again, the system sizing, the tanks, everything else is code compliant. The variance request is strictly setback from Jefferson Street. The reason that we're asking for this is as part of the new owners wish to occupy this property. This is a one-story
wood frame dwelling. It's a historic structure in Codfish Park, and the ability to potentially put a second floor on this structure is limiting. Number one, she does not want to do that, and there's issues with the structure. The prior owner did have a small addition approved to the east of the structure in the vicinity of where that shed is now standing. And the current owner or the future owner would like the ability to potentially maybe do something within that particular area on the site. Anything that would happen on the site would be on a pier foundation. There would not be a full foundation or a foundation wall. The system would be on a pier, so that would not require any future relief from this board. The existing shed that you see on the property, actually, the washing machine and hot water heater for the home is in that shed. And that's another issue right now. That shed washing machine is tied into that existing septic system. So what we'd like to do too is have the ability to actually remove that shed with the small addition on the existing home, consolidate on the inside of the structure, the hot water heater and the washing machine, so they don't have that disconnect with the way the facility currently operates. That is the request. Again, the request has really given us the ability to potentially get rid of that washing machine shed out of that particular area, and then the ability to possibly expand on a first floor level on the site itself without coming before you for any future relief. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. And again, this is going to be an IA upgrade, although not necessarily required. We did it in order to keep the system size as small as we could.
Jimmy? All right.
We permitted a compliant system on this property in January. So with no need for this variance in front of you tonight, so the goal is compliance, they can comply. Obviously, even with the shed and the washing machine and stuff in one building in the existing structure on the property now. So if they can comply, they need to comply. Like I say, compliance is the goal. Every piece of property has its limitations, whether it's setbacks, whether it's distance to wetlands, whether it's room count for septic system size, you name it. So basically wanting to add on to this house, you know, the property's already reached maximum build out. It's reached its extent. So these rules are in place for a reason. My recommendation would be to deny the variance because they can comply.
Does the fact it's an IA system change your mind?
Nope. It's the IA system is, you know, they're getting the reduction to comply. I mean, that'll be your decision to make.
So in other words, they're doing that, I mean, basically just to get the reduction in the size of the leach, which then allows you room for construction or more ground coverage. I don't know if you max out on ground coverage. What is the system permitted for, bedroom-wise?
3 bedrooms.
3? There's 3 existing?
Yeah, we would still need the 3 bedrooms. We would still need the reduction to fit this on the lot. I mean, there's still it's the combination of the IA and pressure dosing that gets us the.
Yeah, well, I get the. I mean, the leach is the most important part. I mean, you need to have that room, but it obviously looks like the tank can meet compliance. You can move it. Right.
Basically, he can comply, but they want to move it so that they can put an addition on the house and remove the shed.
Would that be additional bedrooms or just additional
No,
space for
no.
the
So this is
washing
the-
machine?
It would be the consolidation of the addition off. And as I said, there was previously a ZBA variance granted to put an addition on this, but that was back before when the system would not have been upgraded.
Right.
So, I mean, this is, again, the initial plan that we did was for the current owner when they were looking to market and sell the property. We had an owner come in, had a buyer come in, was interested or is interested in purchasing the property, and asked the question of, was there any possibility to adjust this system so they could do away with that washing machine and then potentially add on to the east. The site itself would be limited, I think, to 1,500 square feet, and it's, I think, around 700 or 800 square feet on the ground right now, if I have to guess.
Is that shed off of the property line?
It's partially within a unconstructed way.
Well, just to point out, last month we had a situation up on Cliff Road where we could comply, and those tanks were moved to comply just recently. So,
Yeah, and that was actually my job too. So
Right.
This one I think is a little bit different in the fact that Codfish Park does present some unique challenges, obviously, for septic systems. And again, the contract purchaser had asked, if we could at least ask the question. It's a setback variance from the street itself, doesn't necessarily affect an abutting owner. And so here we are.
Well, rules say if you comply, you have to comply. We've already turned one person down, as he mentioned last month, because they could comply and they asked for a variance, and where they could comply and move the system, we made them do that. And I think we have to stay on course the way we are.
I think I feel the same way with what Art said.
If I may, Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
Kevin Dale, I represent Melissa Spiro, the contract purchaser. I understand your position about compliance, but unfortunately, this property only complies if the encroaching shed stays where it is. It's a significant marketability problem, marketability of title problem. So although the property may comply with respect to permit issued in January, it doesn't comply, it doesn't meet marketability standards for title, and it's necessary to remove the shed to eliminate that encroachment. So I think that's another factor. I know it's outside your purview. You're not title people, you're Board of Health people, but as a practical matter, by saying that this variance should not be granted, it renders the property unmarketable, which is a significant problem.
Thank you.
I don't
I don't-
think that has a bearing on this, on the Board of Health. I mean, I see a problem, but I don't see where it has a bearing on our decision,
Right.
whether it's marketable or not.
That's
I
like
mean,
saying something's unbuildable until you go through the process. Nothing's not unbuildable until it's not buildable.
I'm not that uncomfortable, actually. I think this is a little different than we had before. This is an IA system. We're not going to have more bedrooms and more people. So I sympathize with both arguments.
Well, all I'm saying is we turned one person down last month because of the decision we made. And as far as I'm concerned, that decision stands.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. If there's a compliant system that you can fit and comply now, it should be compliant without having to give a variance to get closer to the house for purposes of moving the shed. That's, I if you can comply, that's how I feel, so.
I feel the same way.
So, we'll take a vote.
I make a motion to deny.
I'd second that.
For the vote.
Malcolm?
It was seconded.
Oh,
So
Ye-
it's the vote.
Oh, well, I can second it.
okay. All in favor to deny the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Chairman says aye.
So it's 2-3. I vote against denying it, so therefore it's 2-3, 2-1.
Thanks.
With sympathy to all the arguments.
All right, 17.
Okay, variance request, 17 Washington.
17 Washington is actually not an issue. It's a straightforward variance, maximum feasible compliance. The only issue that we had run into was the location of the vent, and in speaking with the engineer and the surveyor, the vent is being removed from that location, so it meets full compliance at that point. So we recommend approval of this one.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 76 Arkansas, similar.
It's the same thing. It's the loan we just approved. It's part of the Tristram's condos. You know how they're really narrow property lines, so we need to get the setbacks variance on that in order to make any sort of septic system fit. That one does. There's no way to comply with all the setbacks on that one.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Okay. Just with the regulation, do we have to just correct the number? 251.
Yeah, just for correction purposes, I think there was some publication out there on the
Yeah, on
the website, or
Yeah, the agenda was posted as Regulation 64 when it is Regulation 51, but the legal notice was correct.
so it is Regulation 51 that we will be talking about.
So we're looking. You'll have to open a public
Yeah,
hearing, but
I get a motion to open the public hearing on regulation.
Second.
Okay, public hearing is open on 51.
okay. So the rate. Yes, which is the regulation on Nantucket. Yes. No worries. So about a little bit over a year ago, we voted to mirror the regulations of Regulation 64, which is what tends to mistake, mirror the Regulation 64, which is the Nantucket Harbor watershed, but for the Nantucket watershed, which would require an IA upgrade at all failure, new construction, or property transfer. We had initially put the implementation date on July 1st of this year in anticipation of the landfill study being completed by SMAST, and we would be able to know what the nitrogen load from the landfill at that point is. As of right now, we still do not have that report, so we are at that crossroads of whether or not we would like to push back the implementation of Regulation 51 or keep it at July 1st of 2019. And I believe there are people here to talk about that as well.
Anybody like to make a comment?
The public microphone that's working is this one. That one is still a little on the fritz, so if you could come to this
Just identify yourself for the record, please.
Yeah, sure. Bill Greeter, 10 F Street. Personally, I don't have a pony in this race. I installed an IA system back when homeowners were told publicly that we had to do so, but privately were told, wait, don't do it. So I guess it's apropos that I'm using the mic that's not on the fritz, because I was on the fritz for doing it. However, I am concerned about the inconsistencies in the town government enforcement and process. Essentially, this policy was the result of the voter delay in sewer expansion to Nantucket. West Enders have acknowledged during that process and hearings in town meeting that the septics in Nantucket did indeed be replaced, upgraded, et cetera, in order to protect the environment. The ask at that time and since then was that the regulations and process have local and current data. So the town agreed, and the process of updating the data has slowly started. Surprisingly, the same firm that did the contentious first study is doing the renewed water quality study. It's my understanding, and as Roberto just confirmed, that update isn't ready, and folks that I've talked to have little confidence that it's going to be ready in the near future. So we're now at the same crossroads we were previously, with incomplete data, an unknown time frame for the process. And the solution seems to be headed to homeowners toe the mark, and the town waits on those that don't deliver the information or didn't in the first place and haven't yet. So I'm asking that we have some consistency, and it's out of this board's hand because you're waiting for material from others, and it's very frustrating for homeowners to have to go in front of a board to begin with because of the uncomfortableness of it. But when we get caught in the minutia of interdepartmental responsibilities and obligations, and the town can't get it together, and the solution is, well, the residents can pay and we'll catch up or squared away. It's getting old, and I hope that somehow this stops, and we can all work on trying to get the Stop and Shop strike squared away.
Thanks.
Hello, can people hear me? Because I haven't heard much. My name is Victoria Gervin. I'm a vice president of Nantucket Residents Association. As one of the Nantucket associations, which requested the water quality study that has, as you know, not yet been completed, the MRA supports the proposed change in the effective date of Regulation 51 from July 1st, 2019 to July 1st, 2020. The results of the water quality test should help to determine the sources of nitrogen loading and should help town officials draw conclusions about the most effective way to deal with this. We strongly agree that the implementation of Regulation 51 should be postponed until the results of the water quality study have been received and analyzed. We don't understand why a decision is being made before the scientific data is in, and we hope that the Board of Health can be patient as we are being patient. Thank you for your consideration.
Anybody else like to? Leslie?
Leslie Forbes, Nantucket. Nantucket residents have, to my knowledge, have worked pretty hard to fix things up. There are many. The last model was run certainly with 2009 data. That's 10 years ago. A lot of IA systems have gone in since then. A lot of the cesspools that used to be along Tennessee and whatever have been converted to actual septic systems instead of cesspools. Our own organization has a newsletter that comes out 4 times a year, and we wrote a very complete educational piece about how to take care of your septic system. So that's gone out to all of our members. I think we're working pretty hard to preserve water quality in Nantucket, in the estuary system to meet the TMDL. The TMDL has been going down over the past 5 years, not overall it's been going down, and even the Bryan House updates have said we need to know what the landfill contribution is here. And because Bryan House is behind, it doesn't seem right to then put the burden on the Nantucket residents because he can't meet his contract deadline.
Anybody else? Jeff?
Good afternoon, Jeff Carlson, Natural Resources Director. Just wanted to give you guys a little update on the Long Pond Nantucket Harbor Estuary Plan linked embayment model rerun. That is behind. I think that's factually accurate. The reason we were delayed is we were waiting for the last round of landfill sampling to get in and get processed to update the load coming from the landfill and have the most accurate information. And that last sample was pulled in February and processed. That report landed in the hands of the DPW director last Friday and is with SMAS and their 2 subcontractors who are working on that model. So they're hoping to get that done as quickly as that can. That was the last kind of piece of information they were looking for. It doesn't look like they're going to make the contractual date of April 29th to be completed, but they should be pretty close. So they have all the information they need now. That was just kind of the last piece of the puzzle for them to get, because I know that was a big concern, was accurately depicting the landfill load as the first model was using. An assumed load level, we have now an actual loading level from the landfill and the wells on site there. So I think that's a critical piece to the update.
How long? So we'd have it after the 29th. Is the work and model run, or?
We're still hoping to get the final technical report with all of the model reruns and the scenarios we gave them. Instead of April 29th, we're hoping to get it now by the middle of May with that data delay. So it shouldn't be too long. But I think going through that and getting that report digested and getting some public feedback and input on what comes out of that report will be critical from our planning process at Natural Resources. So I think having substantive discussions about what comes out of that will be an important part of water quality related to TMDL management.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Is there any way you can give us a drop-dead date when you'll be done?
Off the top of my head,
I would like to have a date.
Yes, Mass.
I understand when you say, maybe it'll be done and we're hoping to have it done, but there's people in Nantucket that need that information. So I need a date. I would like to give this board a date when you will have the information.
absolutely. I will send that through your director and get that to you when we have that update. They just got that.
How long will that take to get that date?
I'll hopefully have that date for you by the end of this week.
Yeah, we'll
or
have to
start
know
of next
from-
week. They just got the data again on Friday and adding that in to update their timeframes as well.
Yeah,
So-
it's not us, it's SMAST
Okay.
that we need to get that
and,
information from.
And CDM Smith, who is doing the landfill
And
work.
CDM Smith, who was pulling the landfill data. So
I have one other question. Was the date given to the people in Nantucket, the drop dead date in July, was that based on we would have the information that we don't have?
correct.
Yeah.
The SMAST had promised us that information by then, that study. That's why we had set July 1st. So we would have known by now. We were supposed to have known by now.
So, in my opinion, I don't think we can find the people in Nantucket lax if we don't have the numbers to give them.
We can continue the hearing to a date past, or we can even move the implementation back now, or we can continue the hearing date to maybe the June meeting, still before the July 1st deadline.
That sounds, I'd be in favor of that. Gives, more, maybe some of the summer people that live out there chance to be back, and then we have the information,
Okay.
a little time to digest it. No.
Yeah, I like the idea of the continuance because I don't think that's fair. Although I have to admit some of my biases here. I'm a scientist by training, and I always like to see data. But I think one mistake we're beginning to make is sort of combining the septic load and the dump load. It's really almost two issues, and whether it's 20% or 40%, to me, the dump would have to be quite high to really convince me we don't at some point need sewers. The nitrogen load, the minimum nitrogen load, is an old number. it's an arbitrary number, and whatever the nitrogen is going in from the sewers, or excuse me, from the septic systems, is more than the natural amount. And I have pushed hard for alternate design systems, but they're still not as good as a sewer. So I would have to see, well, I'll have to see the data, but I'm giving you up front my biases.
Right.
So you know where I'm coming from.
Yes.
But I don't think it's fair to the citizens that we don't have this discussion, and maybe after I see the data, I will get rid of my biases. But that's what I'm thinking right now today, and I would agree that we need to not make this decision today.
Okay. One of the, as far as procedurally, we would have to, well, we have to make sure that
We have to close this
we have to
hearing
close
and
the
then continue it.
public.
No, we can't close, we have to continue
Yeah,
it.
we would have to close the public comment period so that we can discuss
Right.
continuing. So we,
Well, I'd make a motion to close the public comment, unless there's someone else.
Does anybody have anything else to say before we close?
Okay.
Can I get a second on
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Public comments closed.
okay, so as far as continuing it, we would have, in order to make it a full legal continuance,
We'd
we have
have
to
to-
set an exact date. Right now, the June Board of Health meeting is scheduled for June 20th. I will be in Baltimore that week, but if I think Artel will be here to run that meeting. In the event that we get the data sooner or something like that, we can always put out a legal notice again to set up a date at a different time, full hearing.
Well, we need a lot of time to digest it, not just a week.
So,
So that's why I like my colleagues' comments here that, you know, we need a date, a real honest date where we're going to have time to look at it.
so that makes a lot of sense because it's possible that if we get it in late May, we would only have a 2 weeks to go. So we can do multiple things. We can push back the implementation date to include July to maybe August 1st, and then also set it a hearing date for the August meeting, or for the July meeting, I mean, sorry. Which right now it's scheduled for July 18th.
Malcolm, how much time after we get it do we need to go over the numbers?
It depends, me personally, what else I'm doing at the time. And, you know, I want to see the numbers. I would like to see some statistics. And a couple of times we've had reports without statistics, like with just averages shown. But it'd be nice with those averages that we have like a standard
Standard error.
deviation. Because if we're going to make comparison between different numbers, it's really not valid unless we know there's the range of that particular mean or average. And that's not. And I asked a question years ago to someone presenting it, and they said, "Oh no, we couldn't do it." I don't know. Maybe it can't, but that would be helpful when because they make. As I understand it, they take different samples, and they take means of those different samples, and then they average the means of the means, and it gets. And I don't see the statistics of that.
It's very similar to the bootstrapping method in biostats.
Yeah, well,
But they still should be able
they
to
still should
produce-
be able to do it, I believe.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if I had nothing to do for 3 days, and for me personally, what is the date in July?
July 18th is the meeting.
I have a conflict, but this is more important than that conflict.
Okay. We can always change the date as
Yeah,
long as the room is
let's-
available. Which actually I can see if the room is available.
Well, if we continue it to June and we make a decision in June, we can always make a decision that June, if we decide that there will be a deadline, it doesn't have to be the month later.
Right.
All right, so why don't we just continue to,
The June here.
I'd make a motion that we continue the hearing until the June meeting.
Which is June 20th.
June 20th. I get a second?
I'll second that.
So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Now we gotta
June 20th.
to continue to June 20th. All right. Fertilizer.
Okay, next, fertilizer, Regulation 75, I believe.
Yep. So we need a motion to open that public hearing.
I make a motion that we open the hearing on the fertilizer regulations.
All in favor? Aye.
So the fertilizer regulation is a regulation that's been in place since 2012. It follows the best management practices. I believe it was the Article 78 work group. 68, thank you. Article 68 work group, which set the best management practices, and then we echoed that in our fertilizer regulation. Since then, the State Department of Agricultural Resources set a new regulation, which has then been voted into law to set their own rules for fertilizer. As part of that rule, as town council, okay, as part of the regulation for the State Department of Agricultural Resources, what it came down to is the Board of Health is actually not allowed to vote on the fertilizer regulation until the local regional planning authority has voted on any local fertilizer regulation. So what we can do in this public hearing is still discuss any potential changes, but we cannot vote to implement any of those changes until the NPEDC has heard and voted on this regulation first. So that's just a heads up to the board. And then open the public comment.
Yeah, open for public comment. Anybody want to comment? Marty?
Marty, if you can go to the
give me the
microphone.
mic, or
Okay.
Marty McGowan, local fertilizer. Can you hear that? Is this working?
yeah.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
Is
get
it
a little bit
working
closer.
now?
There you go.
Okay. Marty McGowan. I'd like to understand from the board, from the health board, any thoughts or concerns or advisements that you would like to, why this is coming back up with the changing of the rules, but what's coming at me?
Okay. No, you can. So the main issue with the regulation as they are as right now is application on any sort of private property. We're not allowed on that private property without a warrant. That's a due process type of thing. So anything that's within the public way, anything that's not passing curtailment, we can inspect, but we can't just walk through a gate and inspect the property. So it's turned into an issue where we can't enforce some of this regulation on most of this regulation on private property. So what we're looking to do is mirror the state regulation for pesticides and nutrient load, where what we can do is audit the reports that are being written. So we're not making those reports public. So you can still protect your proprietary blends, things like that. All we're looking to do is we can go into the report that you're already filing to make sure that you're in compliance with the BMP, that it is 1 pound or less than a pound per 1,000 square feet. It's really a way to just make sure that it's being applied correctly.
And so, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but the report does not actually ask for how many square feet you're applying it to. It asks for what you're applying.
And that's a major portion of the regulation of the BMP, because if it's all fast release nitrogen, let's say you're putting a 2000 down and it's all fast release, it's completely non-compliant. So we're looking at that sort of stuff too.
So you're looking for like whatever the sauce is.
Correct.
Okay. All right. And so with licensed applicators required to fill out the forms, and Nantucket not really licensed applicators not even seeing the form. How are you hoping to have this information be of value to you?
So what we're working on in this one is actually make it a little bit easier for some of the corporations that, some of the larger ones that have the company applicator's license. So it'll be the one that already comes with maybe 2 or 3 applicators in part of that fee. And then there will be an extra fee for extra people. But really what it becomes is the responsibility of that company to maintain that report. If they are not a Nantucket licensed applicator, it's an immediate fine. If they're doing work here on the island without a Nantucket Island license, because our best management practices are much more strict than off island. So if at any moment we catch anyone with the product or applying any sort of product that is not previously licensed with us, then it's an automatic fine, and the fines are pretty steep because this is part of now that state regulation, so we can go through we don't have to go through 21D, the non-criminal disposition anymore. And then the other part is we can also access the off-island reports through the Mass Department of Agricultural Resources. So it helps us get our heads wrapped around on what, for lack of a better word, what pirate landscaping is happening here too.
I'm going to ask the really simple question. Why? Do you want this extra product management job?
Well, from a fiscal conservative perspective, it's not to add more people. So that's a part of it out there for the finance portion as well. But really what it is, we're trying to really know what the runoff numbers are. There's been a lot of estimates of fertilizer being 5% of the nitrogen entering the harbor, 15% of the nitrogen entering the harbor, things like that. And we don't have an actual quantifiable number. If the data doesn't exist, if you don't collect the data, it doesn't exist, the information. So if we can't quantify it, we can't enforce it.
Can you tell me, in the runoff approach
Correct.
to the harbor, if I'm fertilizing at the airport, okay, beyond the watershed district.
Correct.
I'm over at Tuscana. And I'm fertilizing in Monomoy on the harbor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The correlation is the same?
The correlation may not be the same because the organic nitrogen does break down, but it is still going into the groundwater, and the groundwater is movable source. It does enter the groundwater and does eventually enter the aquifer.
So island-wide is the approach to knowledge collection, because a percentage of X would be what you were looking for.
Very astute.
We try. Okay. So, interesting facts.
Yes, sir.
1, the health board should be, or perhaps consider, a better way of putting it, collecting the soil sample data that is being provided by all people practicing best practices, which would mean you would know who's practicing best practices, because the same guys that aren't filling out the reports aren't going to be giving you that information, which makes your numbers askew.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, so we do twice a year soil sample applications and collect the data so that we have it for our company, and it's helped us. One of the things that we've noticed is that we are actually down to 0 to low phosphates on our properties.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we're not putting phosphates, we have none showing on the soil samples on the properties, then the runoff of phosphates into the harbor would be non-existent. Correct?
Theoretically.
Okay. So if the soil samples are being done, the encouragement for the education and best practices policies are being followed, you'd really be able to see that, you know, I mean, we're trying to eliminate phosphates. It worked. But I'm buying the right bags of stuff, right? I was on a job yesterday where it wasn't the right bag of stuff, right? It was somebody else, but I looked at it and I said, you can't use this. You know, little Marty health boarder. I'm sorry. Just try to step. If I had a badge, I would have put it on.
Marty should have also told the health department about that one.
So I said to the guy that wasn't, you know, what we use here, et cetera. But I think that information might be more readily available to you. And of course, it's only going to come from the people that keep records already. I can give you all my records and, you know, it's going to actually have zeros in that box. So it's going to show you the right thing. And protecting the harbor, very important to our community throughout, you know, right across the board. I think it's a right way to go. I guess if you can request this information, unfortunately, you're only going to get it from the good boys. Or at least I feel that way.
And that's part of it. We'll be getting it from the good boys, and if we'll be hoping to find it from the bad people who are not complying with the BMP. And this will, it's a little bit more of a hammer this time.
Well, I think that the bigger approach to this would be to control to assist or educate the purveyors. You know, I mean, if the local guys are only selling the right kind of stuff, then, you know, that's it. As I don't think it's really even if I can use this number, let's say there's 50 pallets coming in from Home Depot of Scott's 14.
Yeah.
Right? That mathematics compared to the square footage of turf on the island is minuscule, right? Even though it might be 200,000 square feet. You know, that it's really a small amount. Yeah. And are you looking at this at the same time with balancing it against, how are you measuring septic flow into the harbor?
That's a little bit harder. That's what we've been doing is we've only been able to get information from the IA systems because the IA systems have to be recorded every 6 months.
And the old boys are the old yards are the old yards.
And that's part of the issue. So we can only quantify how much nitrogen is being put into the groundwater or how many nutrients are being put into the groundwater through the IA systems right now.
Right, which is very low.
Which is less than 50% of what a standard system goes.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So, I guess I can applaud your effort for making this, you know, continued collection of information. I feel that the easiest way to help the island would be to simply ask the local purveyors of fertilizers to do that. I mean, all the guys that I know are putting down the right stuff right across the board because that's what we talk about when we talk about this, you know, and spoon feeding's becoming more and more apt. A lot of the companies are adapting to that, and meaning liquid food, right? You just put the spoon it into the water and spray it around, and it, boom, immediate contact, and it stays where you put it. So I think that I'm interested in hearing this, but I want to make sure I have something right. This goes to the planning board, and the planning board makes this call?
Commission.
The state MDAR, the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources, for lack of a better term, successfully lobbied to have a control set into local fertilizer enforcement, in that any change to a Board of Health fertilizer regulation has to be first approved by the local regional planning authority, which for us as Nantucket County as well would be NPEDC, the Economic and Development Development Commission as well.
And so is this on their agenda to approve?
Not yet, because we only just heard this from town council. Was today Thursday? 2 days ago. So.
Okay. So somehow we're going to know about this, right? We're going to be.
Yes.
Someone's going to say.
It has to be posted as a public hearing, same way as today was.
Does it have to go through public review and send probes? Okay.
Correct. Same
Thank
way
you for
as.
your time and effort on this one. Hope it hasn't been too painful.
Not yet.
Not at all.
All right.
Thank you, Marty.
Mike Mazzarelli, J&M Landscape Services. I'm also the chairman of the Fertilizer Advisory Committee. We talked about some of this at our last meeting, and I just want to make the suggestion that, especially with us going back to the NPEDC, that we, over the next it's probably going to take 3 or 4 meetings, but work through some of this stuff, because the reporting, as it was listed as we last looked at it, was requesting monthly reports, which is going to be burdensome for everybody. I don't know how we're going to show up at the Board of Health and we're going to have a crate of paper and say, look at these, or, we're going to do online reports. Some of those things should be worked out. And then, on the storage, and I sent you, Roberto, this email earlier.
Yes.
It's requesting that the storage be all in one facility. I'm not sure that that's environmentally going to be where we want to put ourselves. If a huge operation from Boston, say, comes down to the island and has trailer loads of fertilizer all in one place, for my state license, we keep some things in a closet where it's heated and where it should be. Some other stuff is more appropriate to be in its proper storage container if the markings are correct. So I think the Fertilizer Advisory Committee can help. It'll take 3 or 4 meetings, but we should, bring it back to the advisory group and hash it out and hopefully make sense of it all and easy on all the parties involved.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Comment back on that one. At my organic farm, I'm not allowed to keep organic fertilizer with non-organic product. So they actually require separate containers for each product and the same normal lock boxes and everything else, even for organic products, which are supposedly not anything we have to worry about. But yeah, that's storage and perhaps I find the paperwork that you're looking to assume is daunting. Perhaps you should actually consider asking for finalized reports. If you bought 1,000 bags of fertilizer and you put them on the island, right? What was the square footage you applied them to? What was in the bag? And thank you very much. Because then you could say 5% at the harbor went forward in a bad rain, and 1% went through the middle of the island and got through, so you'd have an average over the square footage of something to come up with a mean average number that's going through the groundwater back into the harbor.
Yes, sir.
Something like that. If you got the report, you'd be a lot better off than trying to get the bag. The count, and having to do all of that analysis yourself. There must be an easier way to provide the information that it would be successful for all uses.
Yeah, there's definitely a reporting form that MDAR has that we're going to try to mirror. It's closer to the finalized reporting form that you were talking about. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll be brief. My question, I have two questions. These trucks that come.
Tris, you got to identify yourself.
Oh,
We
my
all
name
know
is
who you are.
Tris
but officially we have to
Damon,
identify.
and I'm a pseudo winter resident. My question is, well, I have two. Briefly, these trucks that come off the steamship with all this rolled up lawn, have they been tested for pre-treatment? Do they get treated before they come over?
That's a good question, actually. I don't think we've.
That's a good question.
That's a very good question. Yeah. It would fall, most likely would fall under, because it comes from a sod farm, would most likely have fallen under the agricultural exemption. So but I don't think there is any testing done on it, but it's just worth an ask. Yeah.
And just quickly, is there any way we could reach out to some private property owners and ask that their properties be tested?
Absolutely.
Some kind of a missive or something?
And no, some people have already offered, and there is soil testing done. If you're going to be putting down any sort of phosphorus in any phosphorus fertilizer, had to have a soil test already done in order for you to apply that, which is part of what we would find on this reporting. So we'd be able to look at the soil tests as part of this regulation.
And one quick thing: are all the companies that sell fertilizer, are they in compliance?
Not all.
Anyone selling Roundup and all that kind of?
All the pesticide, herbicides, and fertilizer sales are regulated by in the state of Massachusetts, are regulated by Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources, and then anything being brought in from across state borders is the federal portion. For some reason, I'm thinking USDA, and I think that might be right, but I have to confirm. And we can't regulate any of that because that's interstate commerce. So we can't stop it from getting on the island. This is one of those examples of voting with your wallet.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Emily Molden for the Nantucket Land Council. I'm a pretty new member of the Fertilizer Advisory Committee, but as you guys are aware, the Land Council's been involved for quite some time, and I just wanted to generally express our support for the changes. I appreciate Mike's comments and certainly look forward to working through some of those concerns at the advisory committee level. And then to Tris's remarks just now, I also wanted to really support the new provisions that require island vendors and stores to display product analysis of what they are selling, because while we can't necessarily prevent them from selling a wide range of products, it's really important, especially for the homeowners who don't necessarily even have a landscaper choosing the product for them, to be more aware of what products are BMP compliant and what products are not. And some of the changes in here will now require those vendors to display that so that people are more aware. So I appreciate seeing that in there too. So thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Lee Saperstein, former member of the Article 68 work group. I thought I'd just be quiet, and then I realized if all of these regulations change, there will be modest levels of errors in the BMP. And so I urge you and the Fertilizer Advisory Committee, particularly in light of the fact that the BMP is now 7 or 8 years old, that there be a working group to bring it up to date, as well as incorporating any of the changes that are approved with the regulation. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yes.
Marty?
Marty McGowan. Suggestion.
Yes, sir.
You know when you go to a restaurant and you see the A on it, right? Means it's clean. right? No, you don't have those in your restaurants down here.
Not on Nantucket, because
give them certificates, and they have them. They do in New York.
Yes, an A- will put somebody out of business here.
There you go.
So
Now, perhaps we could earn harbor-friendly badges or stickers that you put on the landscaper's tag, right? So the guy's working in your yard, he's got a harbor-friendly sticker, which means maybe he reported, maybe he's proving that he's doing best practices, right? But really what it does is it raises awareness, like that sticker would in the window. Hi, we don't have a harbor-friendly, we have harbor-friendly products. I mean, it'd be a real easy way to create a visual connection to do the right thing. It's my mother. Okay. So that's just an idea, guys, about coming up with something that would visually make a connection, because at the end of the day here, it's always going to be about the education of the homeowner. That person is hiring everybody and has to say, this is what I expect from you. So that would be a real easy way to, get the right message out there, I think, without doing too much work.
And we've discussed similar approaches at the fertilizer advisory. It's something we can definitely bring back up again.
Let me know what that sticker's going to look like when you get a chance.
Sounds good. I think we'll have Marty McGowan approved on it.
Anybody else?
Hello, Rita Higgins, speaking as a member of the landscaping community. I know one of the things that has come up is how to get gardeners involved as well. I do think Marty's idea about harbor friendly, I could see, regardless of whether people do lawns, they'll want to have that kind of labeling or sticker as opposed to just saying I comply to best management practice or BMPs. So I think that would be something to explore in getting the gardening community on as well. So.
Good idea.
Well, we could also, I thought about this before, as a homeowner, you could put a little sticker on your fence or something. You say, my lawn is best practice compliant. That might help just the educational part of you. Of course, someone has to organize that and fund it, et cetera. But I think it could be go to your neighbor. Why don't you have one of those?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I'll move the public hearing be closed.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So this
So
just gets passed
at
on.
this point, what we're looking for is just an endorsement to move forward.
Yeah, I mean,
We
have to
can't vote
wait.
on it yet. So
Can I get a-
I was intrigued about, you talked about the good guys who fill out the paperwork. But the bad guys, or those that don't fill out the paperwork, you're not even going to find in the state records, are you?
sometimes we won't. Those are going to be the hardest ones to find, what we're calling pirate landscaping at this
Yeah,
point.
private landscaping.
No, pirate.
Pirate landscaping.
Who are doing the work professionally but without a license. So what we've been looking into is as we find them, we are finding them. And because we don't have to go through non-criminal disposition this time, we can go through the state regulation. We can find pretty onerous amounts.
I like the idea of the badge that says, I'm a compliant person, I'm a compliant gardener, I'm a compliant landscaper.
Exactly. As of right now, we
Or
are.
I'm a compliant homeowner.
And as of right now, we do require all the applicators to carry the license with them, but it's not marketable right now.
In other trades, like if you're a licensed electrician or plumber, plumbing inspector has the right to come up to you on a job and ask to see your license. Doesn't matter if you're on private property or not.
We can. We've actually looked into the rules here. We can ask them to show us if we can see them from the public right away or anything that doesn't cross what's called a curtailment. But the difference between something like a plumbing job where there's specific exemptions for that in the state laws and federal laws. There are no specific exemptions for landscaping. So as far as like building, food inspections, things like that, yes, as soon as that building permit is in the window, it gives the inspector the right to enter the premises. There is a specific exemption for that in the state law. In our case, in fertilizer, there is not. So, okay.
So can I get a motion for a favorable recommendation to
Continue.
continue?
I make that recommendation.
I second it, and I congratulate all that are working on this very complex project.
It's surprisingly more complex than expected.
All in favor? Aye.
All right. And I think that's
it.
what we need a motion.
Got a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
All in favor? Aye.
All right. Thank you.
It won't go off.
Oh, you probably have the one that goes.
All right. Fascinating. I think the fertilizer is unsolvable. It's too complicated. It's not easy. It's too much too complex. Yeah. Yeah.
It's definitely an education. I don't know how you do this.
I know.
You guys that all the time. I did it twice today.